To preface, the scenario involves my roommate, let's call her Callie, her ex, let's call him Tweaky McGee, myself, Tweaky's fling, Nikki, and my roommate's dog, an adorable blue-nosed pitty, let's go with Derpy. Keep in mind, I myself am 25, Callie is 25 as well, but Tweaky McGee is 19. This will be relevant later. Now, this story begins with my roommate. She had just gotten out of an exhausting, but not necessarily abusive relationship, and she was on lookout for something casual while she regained her independence and reclaimed her life. Unfortunately, Tweaky McGee came around and made himself at home in our house. At first, it wasn't too bad. We're all moderate stoners, and he knew the right people. So it seemed like a fair give and take, considering we didn't pay for much smoke throughout the time he was essentially squatting, but he put forth nothing when it came to groceries and bills. Now my roommate was far enough removed from her previous relationship at this point to be fiercely protective of her independence, but given the age difference, she chalked up some glaringly obvious red flags when they began to present. Tweaky got his pet name for a number of reasons, but the main one was this. He had an Adderall prescription, 20 milliliters. As he was prescribed the meds, he chomped on quite a few, but it quickly spiraled into a 10-pill-per-day habit. First, he was just chomping, but began to snort them off our living room table after about 2 weeks. As his habit progressed, Callie also partook, as she has a very demanding job, and the extra energy helped her through her 70-hour weeks. I believe that this is another reason why she put up with it as long as she did. As their relationship progressed, the oh-so-common side effects of stimulant abuse began to creep onto both of them: irritability, poor short-term memory, inability to accurately communicate emotions, thoughts. Since I did my best to stay out of their relationship, as it's not my place to interfere in something I know her to be smart and mature enough to handle, I never really got involved, but she and I had many deep conversations while he was out on runs. I felt like our talks were making headway until one day, Tweaky McGee got a bug in his ass and started impetuously bringing up the idea of getting a dog. Keep in mind, we live in a college town, and while we're both out of school, we work full-time in a very small 2-bedroom house. She was apprehensive at first, since she was already going through the motions of cutting him off, but she had also wanted a dog for years at this point. After 2 weeks of Callie and Tweaky visiting various shelters, they decided on Derpy. Derpy was an absolutely adorable 6-month-old blue-nosed pit bull with one of the most prominent personalities I have ever seen in a dog. My family used to train dogs professionally. Incredibly playful, super smart, and the perfect demeanor for a small house with a bigger backyard. Now, only being your friendly neighborhood stoner and not partaking in the speedy delights, I saw it for what it was, but she was blinded by the adorable pup. Tweaky knew that Callie was setting the stage to kick his ass to the curb and thought that a dog was the perfect ball and chain for the situation, but his age and addiction caught up with him. All the paperwork and payments were made in Callie's name, including the registration paperwork, initial vet visits, professional pet sitters, toys, etc. Since she works incredibly long hours, and Tweaky essentially being a bum, he got the thought in his head that the dog was his, and when push came to shove, he could keep him. Well, the day of reckoning came after about 3 weeks of escalating early morning arguments and general irritation, and while I was at work, the breakup finally happened. Cops ended up being called, but no blows were thrown. Tweaky packed all his shit up and drove it back to his mother's, then came back, told Callie he was leaving, and took Derpy with him. At this time, the cops that showed up had no idea what had been transpiring and let him walk off with the dog. Less than 24 hours later, Callie had made so many calls to the police department, lawyers, pet advocacy groups, that she had her course of action laid out. After the filing was complete, she was beyond paranoid because of the threat of retaliation. I'm a pretty big dude, 6'4", 235, so I knew I could stand my ground, but she's a tiny little thing and I have a full-time job. In my state, any disputes regarding animals are to be settled in civil court, and the pets are treated as property. Now, I don't know about y'all, but pets are family, and do not deserve to be treated on the same base as property. The next day, she had filed a civil suit in an attempt to get Derpy back. At her first court date, she presented all the evidence of her ownership of Derpy, as well as the resources she has available to her in order to provide the best level of care for the pup. Tweaky countered with a slew of baseless accusations, essentially claiming that she had been abusive to Derpy, false, and that she doesn't have the time nor resources to properly take care of him, also false. Unfortunately, the civil court system tends to draw these things out. The court eventually ruled in her favor and ordered Tweaky to return Derpy, but when the cops turned up, apparently Derpy had ran away. Before this, she was only trying to get Derpy back and not really seeking any financial compensation punishment. By this time, approx 2 months after the breakup, which is bullshit on its own, he had already been in and out of a relationship with another woman, Nikki. Nikki had been around and heard about the court shit, but didn't know the other party. Once she found out it was Callie who Tweaky had fucked over, she started messaging Callie, telling her a bunch of info about Derpy, as they were friends back in the day. It turns out that in the time since the breakup, Tweaky had been staying with his mother, an honest-to-goodness hoarder with about 10 SQFT of usable space in her apartment. Tweaky was also unable to take Derpy out on walks or on pup play dates due to the fact that there was still a return order for Derpy. One day, he took Derpy to his dealer's house, who also has 2 pitties of his own. However, Derpy is in his teenage stage, and began, getting fresh with one of the other pits, and ended up getting pretty brutally attacked. Since the return order was still in effect, and the info about him and the dog was given to every vet within 50 miles, he couldn't take him to get treatment. Tweaky also made a deal with this dealer to essentially pimp out Nikki, which was one of the many reasons she was on our side. Upon hearing this, Callie, now off the uppers and much more clear-headed, absolutely fucking lost it. She went to her lawyer to see if there was anything she could do to expedite the return of Derpy. Turns out she had a few options. Cut to today. Tweaky has officially been charged with felony theft and animal abuse or neglect charges, and they're wrapping up the legal process with pleas and other legal whatnot. He faces up to 8 years in prison, and if he doesn't return Derpy within 1 week from today, he will receive the maximum sentence. There is also a separate case in the works from Nikki regarding the whole shady pimping shit he tried to pull, as well as, unsurprisingly, charges for possession, manufacturing with intent to distribute meth and cocaine. Part of me feels bad for him because he absolutely nuked the rest of his life at such a young age, but Callie and I both know that he wasn't going to get any better regardless. He had his chance, and he squandered it. TLDR, my roommate's casual tweaker boyfriend coerces her to get a dog, then proceeds to break up with her and keep the dog for himself, even though he has no right and absolutely no ability to give the dog a comfortable life. Tweaker ends up trying to pimp out his new girlfriend, and the dog had gotten attacked. Roomie only wanted the dog back with no financial compensation, but now the tweaker is looking at a minimum of 8 years in prison, plus more for various drug charges. Edit. Due to the number of people asking for reunion pics, once we get him back, I'll post something in RAW and link it here. For anyone wanting any pup or animal pics, I'd be more than happy to PM a few if interest is shown. Update. As of today, there is a warrant for Tweaky's arrest, and if he does not return Derpy prior to his arrest, he will face the maximum penalty for felony theft, in addition to the substance abuse charges. As for why the cops just didn't go into his home, they actually did. He got around that by saying that Derpy ran away while keeping him at a friend's house. We found that out from Nikki when she began talking to us. We also gave that information to the court, as well as the name and address of his friend, but they must have moved him again. We'll provide additional updates whenever they come to pass. Thank you for all the concern. Thank you for listening today. Here is a picture of Derpy for you to enjoy.